Ah yes, Ben 10. A Cartoon Network show that I first saw when I was 8 years old. It aired around 2010 on our local channel, dubbed in my native language, Filipino. K-Zone was still a thing back then, and I didn't know how to speak in English yet at the time. But nevertheless, after watching a couple of its episodes, I was hooked into it, my boy. And it's been 15 years actually since I last saw it. But the other day I had the chance to watch a couple of its episodes online, and I've decided to make a quick tier list ranking of Ben 10's original aliens from best to worst, with my veteran co in consideration, you know. Hello everyone, my name is mszroms. But before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I am trying to hit 300 subs, and 90% of you aren't subscribed to my YouTube channel, so please, do me a favor, will you? Your support would be very much appreciated in this channel. So with that being said, let's get started. First off the list is Wildmutt, one of Ben's original 10 aliens. When I first saw him, it took me quite a while to make me feel right about it, because he's the only alien in Ben's roster without eyes, which is low-key weird for the first time seeing it. But his abilities consist of his enhanced senses of smelling and hearing, which makes up for his lack of sight. He also has enhanced abilities such as strength, which can be apparent to his fighting style of biting and clawing down his enemies. And he's the only alien within the roster as well that doesn't have the ability to talk. So his communication skills all boils down to the actions that Ben will do whenever he's in this form, which is a minus point in my regard. But overall, he's a straightforward and a basic alien, so I'm gonna have to put him on the D tier. Next is Gray Matter, another original 10 member, and Ben's smartest / smallest alien at his disposal. Transforming into this alien gives Ben a lot of utility, making him speak and understand other languages, skilled at tinkering technology, solving problems, fitting into small places, and even breathe underwater because of the gills in his neck, which makes him a good fit for a lot of infiltration works. But Gray Matter pays this price with his fighting ability. As you could imagine, with his size, his courses of actions are limited in the face of danger, so he's definitely the last guy that you'd pick up when fights ensue. But overall, his pros as an alien outweighs the cons, so I'ma have to put him on the B tier. Next is Cannonbolt, one of Ben's tankiest aliens and his first additional alien. Not gonna lie, I low-key mess with his character design, cause he reminds me of Rammus from League of Legends without the spikes on his back or something. But anyway, to me, I think of him as another straightforward alien because his ability is just straight up rolling like Sonic. That's the scope of his entire superpower, and all of his abilities are based on that. He has a tough armor like shell, which serves good for both defensive and offensive reasons. He fights by dashing towards the enemies like Sonic, and is quite invulnerable most of the times within this state. He's a cool alien, but Ben has to put the extra effort on doing creative stuffs to make this guy look like a badass. So with that being said, I'm gonna have to give this guy a comfortable spot at the C tier. Wildvine, an additional alien from Ben's roster, which also happened to be plant-based, and I'm sure vegans would go crazy for this guy. To me, he's another utility-based alien. His ability includes extending vines and swinging by it like Spider-Man. It's also good at constricting his enemies, and he also has detachable black seeds that grow at his back, which are literally bombs by the drop, so you can easily get creative with him on fights, like Rambo, you know. And in terms of his character design, he looks cool in my opinion, but I kinda preferred him being bipedal, like the rework he got in the modern shows, and I kinda wish that they had that going on back then. So with that, I'ma give him a spot at the B tier. Now Forearms, a member of Ben's original 10 and one of the physically strongest and iconic aliens in the show. He gets used a lot by Ben, so it would be easy to see him. Living true to his name, Forearms has forearms, in case you miss it. His prime ability is super strength, and he uses it to overpower his enemies and deal great physical damages onto them. And by concept, he's fucking manly and awesome. But the thing is that his ability for me is very common. He may be the strongest alien in Ben's roster, but there's also a lot of aliens in his disposal who possess the same characteristic as him. I mean, sure, they're not as strong as him, but they do have it on the least, and with some other abilities to go along with it. He's still very cool though, so I'm gonna have to put him at C tier. Coming up next is Stinkfly, another member of the original 10 and Ben's murkiest alien. Growing up, I really didn't mess with him that much because I thought he was yucky, and I wish to put him lower down on the tier list, but looking at an analytical standpoint, he has great utility. He's the only natural flying alien in Ben's roster. He also shoots out slime, which can either be adhesive for immobilizing the enemy or acidic to toxify them. He also has passable strength to throw it down physically, so I'm going to give him a passing seat within the B tier. Next is Frankenstrike, an additional alien that Ben got later down the series, which I imagine to be heavily inspired by that Mary Shelley novel. In terms of his abilities, he is heavily used by Ben as an electricity caster, utilizing the coils that runs from his back and the occasional physical square up with his buffed body. Sure, he's not as strong as 4 arms because he's the standard for the strongest, but he has decent physical strength for an alien and a standalone ability on Ben's disposal. So for that, I'm going to give him a comfortable spot at the B tier. Next is Upgrade, a member of the original 10, and for me, he's one of the cooler and more versatile aliens in the show. Plus, I also mess with his Matrix-like character design, you know. It was very futuristic and techy at the time. His primary ability is to be able to merge with inanimate objects regardless if it's technology or not, and control it as if it is his own body. He's like a hacker incarnate, and with that ability alone, he's already good, but he also has the ability to shoot off laser from his eye, and with those into consideration, you can get really creative with him, easy. So I'm gonna have to put him up on the A tier. The next one is Eye Guy, one of Ben's additional aliens. As a kid, I found him having such a villainous aura, not gonna lie. He's got a very antagonistic character design, you have to admit, and he was just menacing to look at. Anyway, considering his abilities, the way he works is very comparable to Cyclops from X-Men because he shoots laser rays from the eyes in his body from all direction, which is nice. He also has 360 vision apparently, which I'm not gonna be surprised for obvious reasons, making him a pretty decent alien for what he is. However, I am gonna notch him down a bit because he's a bit of a one-trick pony, and I feel like they could have done a lot more to his character, like maybe give him some physical attacks that won't make him pretty useless if his primary powers got limped down. But it is what it is. Could have been a B tier, but for now, I'm gonna have to put him at C. The next alien is Accelerate, a member of the original 10 and Ben's fastest and the coolest looking alien in his arsenal. He looks very futuristic, and growing up, he was my favorite alien. His ability is straightforward. The boy runs fast. You know, he's equivalent to the Flash or Quicksilver. He's really good at chasing down enemies, escapes, rescues, walking on water like Jesus, and he fights by throwing flurries of attacks on his enemies. Although the problem that I have with him is because he's light and thin, which complements his speed, backfires on him being one of the physically weaker aliens that Ben has, and for me, now that I think about it, his ability is a bit one-dimensional and basic. Nonetheless, he's good for what he is, but I'm gonna have to put him at C tier. Next up is Ditto, and no, I am not talking about the New Jeans song, but one of Ben's additional aliens and one of my favorite creatures growing up, for the sole purpose that he looked cute, you know. His ability is very reminiscent to Naruto's shadow clones, which is the ability to duplicate himself, which is cool to have, especially if you are a working guy, because it increases your productivity. But basically, that's all Ditto does. He doesn't have any fighting assets that can complement with it, unfortunately, and essentially Ditto is useless on fights unless you can get creative with him, you know. So with that in mind, I'm gonna have to put him on D tier, unfortunately. Next on the list is Diamondhead. He's from the original 10 and one of the tougher aliens Ben has, and I low-key mess with him. He's alright in my book, you know. His ability anyway is crystal manipulation. He can basically shoot off diamonds from his body or reinforce himself with it. Considering his body is also made of crystal, it also comes with a handful of buffs natural to it, like refracting laser beams and regenerating himself. For what he is, he has great utility and properties that can be very useful in survival and fights. Plus, he also has a very versatile character design, so extra props to that, you know. Therefore, he got an easy spot on A tier. Coming up next is Snare-Oh. He's basically a mummy and one of Ben's additional aliens. His ability is Constriction, which comes available from him extending the tissues that consist his body. He's also got considerable strength, but his power is very comparable to Wildvine mostly. Although the difference is Wildvine got more utility as he grows bombs and spores from his body and is not retractable, which is a trait on its own but can be very tricky to have in situations if you're taking heavy blows and stuff. He's a cool guy, so I'ma just put him down just one notch below and put him at C tier. Next up is Ripjaws. Growing up, he's one of my favorite aliens. I don't know, my 9-year-old brain just messed with his character design for some reason. And his ability is quite obvious and straightforward. He is an alien that specializes in fighting underwater, with his overall attributes peaking whenever he's in an aquatic environment. Strength, speed, you name it. However, his biggest setback for me is the fact that he's held back to his fullest potential by his primary environment. On land, Ripjaws is pretty mid, and his adaptability as an alien is pretty much on the struggle. And I think that's one of his biggest held back, in my opinion, you know. And it's kind of disappointing. So for that, I'm gonna have to put him on D tier. Next up is Blitzwolf, originally known as Benwolf and a part of Ben's additional aliens. Considering he's a dog, it's not hard to compare him with Wildmutt, and by stretch, I feel like he's the improved version of it. His notable ability is being able to split his snout into fours and blasting a sonic wave, which is kind of weird for me, but it's sort of powerful, so I guess I can't complain about it. He also has enhanced strength, speed, smelling, and in comparison to his preceding dog alien, has the ability to talk and has vision. There are aliens stronger than him on the roster, but he is a notch above Wildmutt to say the least, so I'm gonna put him at tier B. Next up is Ghostfreak, one of the original 10s, and I know that if this was the 12th disciple, he would be comparable to Judas, but I low-key mess with him for some reason. His abilities consist of being able to pass through stuff and possess animated livings. He also has sharp claws as a means for basic fighting, and for some reason he was underutilized by Ben, even before he ghosted the roster for a while because of his selfish reasons. But even so, I find great utility usages with his ability, like infiltration, reconnaissance, intimidations, and such, and has one of the more interesting backstories among Ben's aliens. This may be a controversial choice, but I'm gonna have to put Ghostfreak at A tier. Up next is Upchuck. See that mild pun there? Just kidding. But he is one of Ben's additional aliens, and he's a cute green guy with 3 tongues. You've probably seen him in some stickers back in the day. Anyway, his abilities consist of basically having the ability to eat anything. Like, literally anything. Like, things, metal, and even energies. Upchuck has the choice to either swallow it for good or throw it back as an energy or sludge ball to his enemies. It's disgusting, but it is what it is. I also like his character design, but it's kind of muckily straightforward in terms of his powers. And with his body size, he's kind of vulnerable to imminent dangers, unless he's kind of like meters away where he can hurl up his vomit and stuff. So with that, I'm gonna have to put him at D. Next up is Heatblast. To me, he's my all-time favorite member of the original 10 roster, just because his character design is so OD, and his entire body is made out of flames. Like, yo, he's like Ghost Rider if his entire getup is in flames. Anyway, his ability is basically fire manipulation. He can throw fireballs on his enemies, absorb fire, and reinforce himself with it naturally in physical fights. You can also get creative with him and gain the ability to fly if needed through fueling himself up with flames. His utility as an alien is alright, his fighting abilities are also viable, and I'm gonna have to put him on A just because also his aura points as an alien is quite nice, you know? Like, holy shit. And lastly, we got Way Big. That's what she said. An additional alien from Ben's roster, and he's very reminiscent to Ultraman. He has a very cool and heroic character design to say the least, so I mess with that. And his abilities is just straight up like broken, you know? He's a 200 feet tall dude with no debuffs on his speed. Like, I mean, look at Attack on Titan. Even the giants there are slow, you know? But not this guy. Having this guy as an enemy is just a straight up nightmare. Jeez. And he also got enhanced physical attributes as his means of attack. But to put the cherry on top that goes with him, he has the ability to blast off cosmic rays that are apparently strong enough to destroy planets. Destroy planets. Like, even the strongest A-tier alien in this list right now doesn't have the physical capability to do something like that. Literally, even if they wanted to. Like, at this point, what else could you say against him that is kind of like a downside on him? It's like, no, this guy is just a straight up monster. And objectively, he's the best alien on Ben's roster. And so for that, I have no choice to put him at S tier. Anyway, with all things put into consideration, here's the final result of this 19 item tier list. Honestly, that took longer than I expected, but still, we managed to finish it, and that's all that matters at this point. Anyway, what are your thoughts about this rating? Do you have any favorite aliens? Or do you have some placement in this chart that you don't agree with? Leave your comments down below and let me know. Thanks for watching, and keep living out there.